Breathing in, I relax my body. I release any tension in my neck, my shoulders, my back. Just let everything go. Breathing out, I smile. I feel joy, the joy of letting go. In, relaxing the body. Out, smiling with joy. Breathing in, I feel joy to be alive. I am alive in this present moment, this legendary moment. Breathing out, I smile to life within me and around me. In, joy of being alive. Out, smiling to life. Breathing in, I touch happiness. I have nowhere to go. I have nothing to do. Breathing out, I dwell happily in the present moment. In, happy. Out, in the present moment. Breathing in, I'm aware of any anxiety or fear present in me. Breathing out, I smile with compassion at my anxiety, at my fear. I know anxiety and fear are part of my mind. They are full citizens amongst the mental formations. For so long, I haven't understood you, my anxiety and my fear. In, recognizing anxiety and fear. Out, smiling with compassion and understanding. Breathing in, I practice letting go of my anxiety and my fear. I no longer allow them to take over, to invade my mind. breathing out, I feel free. Letting go of anxiety and fear. Free. Dear respected Thay, dear noble sangha, thank you for your practice. You may like to give your shoulders a massage. If we were together, we could give each other a massage, but since we're on Zoom, we pretend that the person next to us is massaging our shoulder. And we can feel together. We need to take care in this time to have physical contact. And since we can't reach out and touch each other, we can touch each other over Zoom. Thank you. Thank you for the massage, Pete. Pete is next to me on the screen here, so I could feel his hand. In our practice, we like to look at our hand, so maybe you can take a moment and hold up one of your hands, either your right hand or your left hand, and just enjoy looking at it. For about 350 million years or longer, we've had something. Take your arm. Maybe if the brother can zoom out a bit so I can see my arm. Yeah, you know, we have this arm, this wondrous arm. It has one bone, two bones, and many bones. That one bone, two bones, and many bones has been around for at least 350 million years, something like that. Since our ancestors, a kind of bony fish, made its way up onto the shore. And now when we put that hand on our shoulder, we are also, it is like we are walking on shore for the first time. and our body is Mother Earth. This body is not separate from Mother Earth. And when we look into our hand, we can see something like a chimpanzee ancestor, or something like a burrowing animal, maybe like a squirrel ancestor, or something like a reptile ancestor, or something like a fish, or maybe amphibian ancestor, all in the one bone, two bones, many bones of our hand. They are still there, fully present in this body. And so in meditation, we do not look at the brain as something isolated from the rest of the body. Sometimes when we study consciousness, we think, oh, it's the brain and then the control center. And so we just continue in our thinking of some kind of self, some kind of being that is controlling everything. And the Buddha invited us to look more deeply, to see what does it look like if we let go of that idea of ourselves, and notice that things look wondrous when we look with the eyes of non-self. And so no matter what our name is, our background, our beliefs, our political party, yeah, all of this is something that's just happening in the level of concepts in our mind. And it turns out that all of that is the cause of our anxiety. It's the cause of our fear. Right now, none of us are being attacked. And yet somehow, this feeling of fear, anxiety is maybe in us. Maybe sometime today you felt fear and anxiety. What if things don't go my way? Looking at the newspaper, looking at the internet. And so I practiced this past 24 hours to be very careful what I'm consuming through my eye, through my ear, through my nose, but especially through my eyes and my ear. I'll be honest, I didn't look at anything until about 45 minutes ago. Can you believe? So, and I can, to be honest, I had some emotion, so I'm not, yeah, I had some attachment. But I learned a lesson in 2016 that I need to take care of my emotions and the way I want things to be. I learned that in many ways, not only in 2016. And when I look back at our ancestors, who didn't live with some kind of belief that they had some effect on the rest of the world, who were raised in a poor farm, perhaps, didn't own any land, maybe had a few pigs and seasonal work, and sometimes a new child coming along. We don't know if that child will live or die. and how we will feed it. And most of our day is working and having children so they can work as well. And the idea that we might have some effect on who will win an election or who will be put in power is very far from our mind. The power structures are in place for many generations. And somehow, I believe those ancestors, they still could touch some happiness. They still could understand what it means to dwell happily in the present moment. Even for maybe just brief moments. That is our practice in Plum Village, to look deeply and see this ancestral running that has been going on for many generations. That is our meditation. So the fear of the bony fish coming out of the ocean, the primordial ocean, and breathing the air, looking where to lay its eggs, and knowing it has to go back into the water, that maybe those eggs will be eaten by predators. That same fear, that anxiety, has been continued on. The small burrowing animal going underground to escape from the jaws of a predator. And then eventually, maybe something like around 50 million years ago, our primate ancestors enjoying a very balmy world with no more big dinosaurs. And so we could grow bigger and stronger and lived up in trees. Still a little bit fearing to come down on the solid earth, knowing the dangers that are there. And eventually developing this enormous head, only in the past few million years. So big that we have trouble coming out of our mother's hips. Most animals, they have plenty of room, but human beings, in order to walk upright, our hips became, both for men and women, became very small, and so this big head, which needs so much sugar, had trouble coming out of our mother's womb. And sometimes in all of our ancestors, there's certainly our mother died giving birth to us. And yet that even in her death, that heat, that unquenched warmth that has been passed down since the bony fish has continued until this moment, here, this present moment. So each of us is an aggregate of all of these ancestors. We are the present manifestation of their continuation. And that is a little bit more accurate than thinking, I am so-and-so, born in this place, that I have this job, that I belong to this political party, and such and so on and so forth. So it's not that we we are not a continuation, but it's that usually our idea of our continuation is not very deep. It's very superficial. And because of that, we suffer so much. So I wanted to share a little bit today about that fear and anxiety that keeps coming up in our ancestral lineage. Perhaps many of us, how many of us are, I think most of us are living here in America, is that right? Is anyone not in the States or Canada? Yeah, so I also grew up in the States, in Connecticut, and I spent the past 10 or 11 years in France. And one of my deeper meditations was with all of my running ancestors. All these ancestors who ran away from the graves of their forefathers and foremothers for one reason or another. Most of them out of hunger, out of poverty. But they all have one thing in common, which is they all uprooted themselves from their ancestral land, and they decided to get on a ship, most of them, and come over across the ocean and start a new life here in the States. And I think for all of us, we have that, we have those ancestors. And so I often meditate on the cumulative effect of all of these ancestors that uprooted themselves, that had an ideal, an aspiration for a better life, and how that ideal has been transmitted in every cell of my body. So when the fear and anxiety comes up, I smile to my ancestors with respect. I don't, not with judgment, with respect, knowing that they lived as best as they could in the conditions that they had. But also recognizing that there's a lot of running away, running away from something and running towards something else. So when we came down out of the trees and we started walking on the savannah, digging for roots, looking for new sources of nutriment and getting more starch, so our brain became bigger. And we developed the capacity to plan for the future. And this had distinct advantages. We could hunt as a group. We could track down prey, and usually an antelope or some other animal in the savannah. The strategy is to run back into the herd and you lose track of them. They are much faster than us, but they cannot run as long as us. We are some of the most enduring species, one of the most enduring species in terms of, we just need a little bit of water. We've got all these sweat glands all over our body. And as long as we've got water, we can run for days and days and days, even without food. So we can't run faster, but we can keep at it for a long time. And because we're also upright, we could stand on two legs. So the sun does not affect us as much as the other animals on the our four-legged cousins. And so we learned how to spot that one antelope, or that one, something like a deer, and not lose track of it. If we kept running it down, it will eventually collapse in the heat of the sun, and we don't even have to do very much. So that capacity to plan, to track, continues to hound us. Even when we're not tracking anything. We are caught in our idea of what we want, what we need to be happy. And we don't want to lose track of it. So it might be the next fix, the next glass of beer or wine. It might be our job, our career, getting that promotion. It might be just wanting to have a happy family with children that are healthy, with grandchildren. Whatever it is, whatever that thing is that we fix on, that is sure going to make us suffer, for sure. And that suffering is a part of our evolution. That's my deep looking is, yeah, because when we are hungry, we suffer a little bit, and so that makes us go out and find the roots, to hunt for, to know where those roots grew last year and where to dig them up again this year, to know where to find, to track that one antelope, to fix on it. So these things are all, they have a very practical application. And when the Buddha decided to leave home, I believe he saw this nature in his mind, always tracking, always seeking, always trying to find. But he didn't know a way out of it. And so he tried to let go of his titles, let go of his position in the family, in his tribe, in his country, and walk with 2 feet on the earth. He cut his hair and let go of his possessions. First he tried also, like his ancestors, like our ancestors, to dig roots, eat the fruits of the forest. And he had experiences of coming out of the forest, looking onto the village, like a deer looks out on the human beings in the village. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. Sometimes I've practiced to go in my backpack for many days alone in the forest, and after a few days like that, when I come on a human habitation, I try to look with the eyes of the deer. Who are these strange human beings? They've got such cute noses and funny ears. Sometimes we need to do that. When we let go of ourselves, our idea of who we are, we can look with the eyes of our animal ancestors. We are animal. But we can bring all that out. That's the beauty of the teaching of non-self. You get to see that this whole host, this massive crowd of ancestors, which are present in you. Human ancestors, something like a chimp ancestors, something like a burrowing animal ancestors, and so forth. It's like you have this, like the ultimate mega computer, the ultimate mega smartphone, megapixel, with millions of megapixels. But it's right there in your very body, except you just don't notice it because we're so distracted with all the smartphones with their megapixels and computers with their screens. And so we forget. So that's why Thay invited us to stop. In the monastery we have a lazy day. And many people complained. They said, Thay, why do you call it a lazy day? And he said, because people in the West, they need a lazy day. They're always running. When Thay came over to speak out against the war in Vietnam, they brought him from one city to another. Sometimes Thay would wake up and he didn't know anymore what city he was in. And he felt, I cannot keep up with this pace of people in the West. And so he learned to walk mindfully, come back to his breathing, come back to his step. And he refused to speed the pace of his walking up to meet the pace of the society in which he found himself. That was his anchor, a mindful step, knowing that when my foot touches the earth, I'm 100% there with my step, the sole of my feet touching Mother Earth. I arrive in the present moment. This is the address of life, here and now. I'm no longer running. And what that does is it trains us to be content with what we have right here and right now. Most of how we make ourselves suffer and how we make others suffer is in our seeking, following our idea of happiness. Like if I want to be even in the monastery, if I want to have this position of power or authority, or have people admire me, or many people like Dhamma talk on YouTube, or many people come if I give a talk, then I lose myself completely. Then the Dhamma is no longer there. And this happens even if you are a monk or a nun, if you're not careful. So how much more so when we are out in the world, and that is part of the stream, it's part of what everyone is doing. Even you say, I don't follow that, I'm not in the rat race, but we have to be careful, because if we don't practice like Thay, to really stop with our step and just come back to our body and just see, this is a happy moment. This moment, this step is a legendary step. This breath is a legendary breath. I remember when Thay had the stroke in 2014, and there was Thay was in a coma. It was November of 2014, and there was a need to take I think a biopsy in Thay, but one of the doctors made a slight mistake and actually collapsed Thay's lung when he injected in in his chest. And so Thay had one lung working and the other was collapsed. And so Thay went into the intensive care unit, and I remember Brother Phap Luu, the abbot of Plum Village, he told this story about how Thay then, he was next to Thay and he said, Thay, come on, you can do it, you're a professional breather. And Thay was able to re-inflate his lung by himself in a coma. Somehow all those years of training and breathing, he was able on his own, and the doctors were so amazed. How did Thay do that? Thay is in a coma. And yet somehow, by training his breathing, I don't know how, I'm not a doctor, but I know that the Thay's lung collapsed and somehow, whoop, it popped back and Thay was able to breathe fully in that lung again. And that's what Phap Luu said. He said, I know you can do it, Thay, you're a professional breather. So how do we become a professional breather like Thay? It takes a lot of training. So in this moment, you can take a moment and just come back to your breath. Breathing in, breathing out. See, we all can do that for one breath. But to train, to have establish some kind of discipline. Many people ask, sometimes they ask us in the monastery, why are the monks and nuns not out in the demonstration? Why are we not, our path is engaged Buddhism. But if we see that our engagement is actually with our step, with every step, really coming back to our step, our engagement is with the breath. I know that in my ancestral lineage, perhaps all of my ancestors never had the opportunity to be invited to take a mindful breath, even just one mindful breath. So this is a great act of insubordination, a mindful breath. When you feel like you're oppressed and you have no sovereignty over your life, just stop. Feel your feet on the earth. And breathe mindfully. And suddenly, Thay is there. It's amazing. I did that many times because sometimes I miss so much listening to the Dhamma talks of our teacher or just hanging out with Thay. The other day we were walking up on the mountain above Deer Park, and I remembered in 2000, I think it was 2011, and I was walking behind Thay, coming down off of Escondido Rock. And the trail is quite uneven. There's some places that are tricky even for me. And I remember watching how mindful Thay was with every step. And Thay was about 85 or older, I think. Now Thay is 26, 94, or 94 years old. So in 2011, about 85, 86 years old, and Thay was still walking down an uneven rock down the path. It's something so alive in that, so natural, so native to us. It's wonderful, but it doesn't come just like that. In every step is Thay's years of training. Years of stopping, not getting lost in the future. Coming back and seeing that in this very body, happiness is possible, right here and right now. That is such a profound training. That is the essence of the Buddhist path. You don't have to use words like nirvana. It's dwelling happily in the present moment. I don't know, some of you may have seen the talk by Thay Phap Luu on Sunday. And there's a very important teaching in there, where we learn to take refuge in the place of non-dwelling. How to dwell in the refuge which has no basis, is unconditioned. This is a moment, right, when this election and we're still some unknown, right? How do you deal with the unknown? I noticed that lately most of my path, most of my daily life is just venturing out into the complete unknown. Just noticing all those ways in which I rely on that thought, that assumption, that view, that vision for all of humanity, that way forward, that idea about who I am, those ideas about the quality of my relationships. But what if it's all just here? It's all just thinking. What if those perceptions are wrong? And yet, I rely on them. I need them to be there. I need them as a place of refuge. That's what I've been noticing lately, these past few weeks, because I just arrived at Deer Park about 2 months ago. And I lived here, 10 years ago. I left 11 years, 2009, I left Deer Park to go to Plum Village. And at that time I was just a young bhikshu. And coming back here, it's not the same and it's not different. Not entirely different. The mountain is there, and the brothers have changed. And even the brothers that are the same are not entirely the same. They're also not entirely different. But what I notice is that as far as I have any expectation of what I am doing here, of what my role is, of what I should be doing, to that extent I will suffer. But to the extent at which I can stay in a space of unknowing, that I can be at peace with that unknowing, with that uncertainty, then fear and anxiety no longer have a basis on which to arise. They have nothing to hold on to. So long as I have a concept, any idea, any refuge that I can articulate, that I can think, that is the place where my fear and anxiety will take hold. And usually that is my idea of happiness. my deepest ideal. We all have a deep aspiration. It's rooted in our drive to survive, to live. Thay called it the jivita indriya, the faculty of life. And that drive to life has been transmitted to us by countless generations. If our parents did not want to continue living, we would not be here. And with that faculty of life is also the desire to reproduce, right? Sexual desire is not only to reproduce, but that is part of that desire. And because of that desire, magnified over many generations, we also receive that. And so we objectify our love. Actually, for the human race to continue, we don't need to find our true love. I'm sorry to tell you. It's very, very, very little is needed, actually. Certainly we don't need to find our true love in order for the human race to continue. And actually, mostly in our ancestral lineage, we never found our true love. So you can rest at ease. If you haven't found your true love, it's okay, because most of your ancestors didn't find it either. And yet you're still here. You made it, you manifested in the present moment. And what is our true love? Is it just an image? Is it that person who makes us feel happy at every moment of the day without exception? I don't know if any of you have found a person like that. I don't know if such a person exists. So what I learned as a monk is to love myself, to just love this body, these feelings, these perceptions, but not expect anything of them. It means I don't attach to them. We talk about the 5 skandhas: the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. This is what we usually think of as a self. And sometimes we grasp wrongly that teaching, and we think, oh, I should reject my body, reject my feelings, reject my perceptions, my mental formations, and we reject everything, and so we want to end our life. And even in the Buddha's time, some monks grasp the teaching the wrong way, like that. And they developed a kind of hatred of the body, a hatred of their feelings, their perception of who they are, the color of their skin, their inheritance. But the Buddha actually, when we look deeply, and Thay looked deeply into the Buddha's teachings, he saw that the skandhas are always described as the 5 skandhas of grasping. It means we grasp at our body, we grasp at our feelings. And what we are learning to transform is that tendency to grasp at our body. My body should be like this. I need to get the Fitbit. I need to go to the gym, LA Fitness, so that my body will reflect the image that I love of myself. I need to have pleasant feelings. And so I need to consume things that give me the feelings that I want to have, that I think are me, mine, or myself. Whether it's a beer, or wine, a cigarette, a fix, or sex, whatever it is, images. And so we grasp at those feelings, and so then we open the laptop, or we go to the bar, or whatever. We open the refrigerator and we consume to try to get those feelings. That is where the suffering begins. And I think we all know this, so I'm not like trying to give a sermon or anything, but it's more to understand very clearly this point, that is the grasping that we are transforming, not getting rid of our body, not getting rid of our feelings, not getting rid of our sensations. That is why Thay teaches us to enjoy when we eat our food. We learn to look deeply into the food and see there is the sun, there is the rain, there is the earth, the farmer. We can enjoy eating our food. When we deeply enjoy eating our food, we don't get attached to the food. We are with the food 100%. We don't get caught in an idea about the food. So when we practice mindful eating, we eat the food, not our projects, not our worries and anxiety. That is the training. Notice, especially when we're stimulated by the smell of food, eating it stimulates all kinds of memories, which stimulates thinking. And so actually we're eating the food, but we're not really there with the food. We're eating a kind of like phantom carrot, as one of my brothers said. This is something we studied in neuroscience. Mostly when we are eating and doing habitual activities, we're not actually eating the food that we think we're eating a phantom of that food. So you start to eat the carrot, you put it in your mouth, and once you've just got enough information to know that that carrot is not rotten, that it's mostly like every other carrot you've eaten, then you go and you start thinking about something else. Your mind goes somewhere else, and you just eat a phantom carrot. You're just eating your memory of a carrot. So in mindful eating, we come out of that forgetfulness. We come back to this visceral experience of eating the carrot. Wow, carrot is so sweet, a raw carrot. It's a wonder. And so that training then makes us free, it allows us to become free of the grasping towards the sensations of eating food, or whatever, of drinking alcohol, whatever it may be. So this is our training. And the same is true with our perceptions. Yeah, when we walk around and we see how somebody's dressed, we see the way that they walk, the way that they talk, we start to think, oh, they will vote for this person for president, they must be in this political party. And suddenly, either feelings of happiness or feelings of aversion are brought up in us. That is grasping at perceptions. That's our grasping mind. And that is something we choose to do. If we want to be sovereign, if we really want to be free, we need to choose and see, I don't want to get carried away by that perception. I take refuge in the unconditioned, the place of no dwelling. That is the teaching of I have arrived, I am home. It is to dwell happily without any basis or foundation. Only this present moment. Don't know what you're going to say next. I don't know what I'm going to say next. Who knows? It's just wondrous existence. And then mental formations. So back to the fear and anxiety. In that place of non-dwelling, our fear and anxiety, they disappear. It's that fear and anxiety that comes from being backed into a corner, like the lobster in the sea that draws back under the crevice of the rock, hiding away in the corner. That is the fear motive, right? seeing something, some perception, and then we pull back. And so now we live in a time when people are living unprecedentedly long lives. People have access to healthcare which is unprecedented in the history of human life. I know that healthcare is a big problem in the US, but still, we have access to the kind of healthcare that is unprecedented. And yet, we are overwhelmed with fear and anxiety. It seems even greater than our ancestors. So that's just an invitation to look deeply. What is that? What is the basis of that fear and anxiety? There are things like climate change, racism, social injustice. Those things are there, and they are very real. But the deep insight and conviction of our teacher is that when we can learn how to dwell in this place of non-dwelling, take refuge in the unconditioned, when we are filled with joy, that is the space from which we can transform the world. That is the place from which we can transform ourselves, transform our ancestors, the current of our ancestors, who are filled with racism as well, filled with insensitivity towards the environment, filled with hatred, anger. Yeah? We can allow them to come up and embrace them, accept. It's like we just like we did massaging at the beginning of the Zooms, I practice to embrace all of my ancestors, even with their anger, their hatred. If we don't do this work, how do we expect for society to change? How can it possibly change if we don't learn how to embrace all of the anger, all of the anxiety, the fear, and the hatred that is in every cell of our body? It's not enough just to change a political regime. This is the work. Yeah. And when the Buddha recognized that one of his students had completed that work, he said, what had to be done has been done. There is no longer any coming to be. There is no longer any grasping at being anything. Being this, being that, being rich, poor, happy, sad, successful, unsuccessful. Yeah. And this is a training. It's a training. I don't say I'm free from all of these things. This is my practice. I'm telling you what I do. This is, please don't misunderstand. I also have to embrace my anxiety, my fear. But this is I'm sharing. This is what I do with it. We are all like friends on the spiritual path, and I know that there are still aspects of my ancestors that still are we're still cooking inside. We still need some transformation in the way that I speak, in the way that I act with my brothers, the way that I think. But what I'm very sure about is that there's a path, and I want to walk on that path every day, and that is something I want to do together, because I know that when I do it together with the sangha, I have a lot of happiness, a lot of transformation, and all these things that I have difficulty seeing when I'm alone in my own practice. My brothers help me to see it. My sisters also very much help me to see it. And that is the beauty of a sangha. We help each other on the path to see those things that we're grasping at, those mental formations, those perceptions that we're still stuck on. And we can, let go. And we let go, and we let go. Even, it's like releasing layers. Sometimes we described it like layers of an onion. And when you peel the last layer, there's nothing there. So, but still, the fragrance of the onion is there. So I invite you to practice letting go. Even letting go of those things that you have trouble letting go of. So you start with things that are easier, but then slowly you let go of more things. Let go of your opinion, for example. In situations in your family, in your work, notice where you're known for that opinion, for the one who always has that view about something, and see if you can let go of it. Your colleagues might look at you with surprise and wonder. Oh my gosh, he's always saying that, but suddenly now he's not saying that. What happened? And that's the thing. You let go. You went into a space of unknowing, where you're still breathing, your body's still there, and yet you've let go of that view. How is that possible? You thought that view, you needed it to live. Like, I cannot live without that view. If I don't have that point of view, who am I? I don't know anymore, right? But you let go of it, and I'm still breathing. I'm still there. I can feel my body. I don't have that view anymore, yet here I am. And that is a training. And things get really interesting. That's where the Dhamma gets really interesting. And you get a lot of joy. It's like joy that's already there, but it's suddenly rushing in. More joy than you know how to handle sometimes. Sometimes I think the Buddha taught it as a gradual path, because if we touched all the joy that comes from letting go of our views, at once we might be overwhelmed with joy. Okay, so I've been talking for almost an hour now, so maybe we can take a moment and listen to the sound of the bell, and then leave some time for some questions. If you have any questions. But first we can breathe with the sound of the bell. So, I think we can just be free form here. If there's some question, just unmute yourself, and I'll be muted for a while, and then so we don't get feedback, and we'll listen to the question. And a good question doesn't have to be very long, but a good question can come from our heart, and if it really comes from our heart, that question can help many people.
Go ahead, Marty.
Be on mute. I'm bowing in. I'm Marty.
And my younger brother recently decided to stop drinking alcohol. And it's been in the last week and a half or so. And he doesn't want any help. And he sent a very belligerent email to myself, to my brother, and to my sister, about that if we had any comments about what he's doing, to keep them to ourselves. And I would, but it was put with very, very negative language. And at the bottom he said that he appreciated us very much as his siblings. And I had a lot of trouble sleeping that night. So my question is that I would like to know, well, in the morning I woke up and I thought, you need to have compassion for him, because I have my own very customized crazy thoughts, and I need compassion as well. But I vacillate between that and feeling hurt and angry about what he said, and I'm wondering how, what you might suggest in terms of moving forward with dealing with this, because he has nothing to anesthetize his feelings with anymore. So I feel that this is the beginning of a whole bunch of stuff to come. Thank you. Bowing out, Marty.
Yeah, thank you, Marty, for your question. Can you hear me again? Okay. So thank you for your practice of compassion. I think it sounds like you have the answer already. It's just a matter of training and keeping that mind. When we say hurtful things, it means we are suffering. That is clear. And the insight of the Buddha is that when someone says things that are hurtful, that is that is the cause of much pain and suffering for that person. And we also suffer because the words may be directed at us, but so long as we are grasping at the me, mine, or myself in the words that they say, we will suffer. So when I receive an email like that, and I have received emails like that sometimes from my, sometimes I've done something unskillful or just not been aware that I might cause somebody to get angry with me, and so that's why I practice. I practice not to just take those words at the surface level, but to look more deeply and to see the pain and the suffering in that person. Actually, it's just a person expressing their pain, and they may not have learned how to express their suffering in a way that can bring about transformation, but rather they blame and judge and so forth. And so the important thing that I've learned, and it's not easy, is that it takes two to tango, right? So as long as we engage with the hurtful words of another person, and we respond with blame and judgment, then we are entering into the cycle with them of the action, right, or karma. So if I don't know how to respond, I just keep silent, and I continue to practice to let go of my hurt, let go of my anger, and bring up that mind of compassion. It's always a balance, right? It's like, then you find yourself angry and hurt again, but then you're always, okay, practicing to let go, see the suffering in those words. That is the suffering that he's experiencing. It may have some small part to do with you. Thay had the mantra, you are partially right. So when somebody's hurt and they're angry at us and they blame, that's something we can say, you are partially right. Some things that I said or did may have contributed in some way to your suffering. We can acknowledge that. But we know that the vast majority of that person's pain and suffering is coming from within themselves. They don't know how to embrace that anger, that suffering, and so in that way we don't react and say, but you did this or you did that. You see, then you enter into the cycle of blaming and judging and so forth. That's the most important thing, is that we don't react like that. We come back to our breathing, come back to our body. We put an end to that kind of behavior. It's not suppressing. So you're really hurt, you're really angry, and you recognize that. But you can choose not to say or do anything out of that anger. That is a training, that is a kind of discipline. And I've had many experiences where I was so angry at one of my brothers. A few times it happened. And I lived out the whole scenario of what I would say to get back at them. I would say the worst thing, even worse things than they said. All of these things, they played itself out in my mind. And yet I didn't say those things. I didn't do those things. And then I would wake up the next morning and I'd say, wow, thank goodness I didn't say or do those things. Because repairing a relationship takes a lot of energy. Much more energy than it takes to not say that thing and not do that thing. It's very interesting. I've looked at it very closely in myself. It's much less energy not to say or do that thing than to spend time repairing the relationship, saying, I'm sorry I said that, I'm sorry I did that. And even then, the hurt is still there and it continues on within you and within him. So I choose the path of, it's a little bit easier actually. When you see the whole trajectory of the emotion, it's much easier. Just don't say it, don't do it. Take time, breathe, do mindful walking. And when you feel the hurt and the anger, then notice where there are spaces between the moments of hurt and anger where maybe you don't feel anything. You don't feel angry, but you don't feel like necessarily happy. And just widen those spaces. So see if you can widen the spaces between your feelings of hurt and anger. That's something I do. I usually do it, I like to do it when I'm doing walking meditation. And then I find sometimes for 5 or 6 steps, I didn't have any thoughts of hurt or anger. And then maybe I could widen it more and do 7 steps without being angry or hurt. And then gradually, when you do that, then suddenly you don't feel hurt and angry anymore, or it's much, much weaker. So this is the way of weakening, not letting the hurt and the anger overwhelm our mind. It's still there, it's not being suppressed, but you're removing the nutriment. You see, our thoughts are a source of nutriment for our emotions. Very simple. Your ideas, your concepts, your thinking, your perceptions feed your mental formations. So your anger needs food in order to survive. If it doesn't have food, it cannot survive. So you're just removing the nutriment, you're removing the food. You're not giving rise to that thinking. You can start by coming back to your breathing, being aware of your step. Personally, when I'm hurt or angry, I find mindful walking a little bit easier than just sitting, moving my body, coming back to my step. And then the compassion has space in order to come up. And this is something I practice. I shared about it many times. There's one time when I was so angry at a brother for something he said. I was a young monk, and we were the only two in a country where they don't have monks come very often. And it was actually thanks to, we were just starting a retreat together, and it was thanks to the practice of all the people there that I was able to overcome my anger. And this is what I practice. I widen the spaces. I was doing walking meditation that evening, because many times I saw myself going in and giving that brother a piece of my mind. But instead I was able to not do it. And I remember the next morning waking up and saying, wow, that whole nightmare of things that I didn't do. And that all of the things that I have to say to apologize for the things that I said the day before, I don't have to say anymore, because I didn't say them and I didn't do them. And what a freedom that was. Wow. It's like I get freedom for free. You know, like I don't have to pay any, just by not doing, I'm free. So this is really interesting. And it's the same, I'm just describing in another way the practice of dwelling in the unconditioned, right? In the place where there's no concept, no idea, it's just another way of talking about it. It's like you can't get stuck because there's nothing to stick. How can you get stuck if there's nothing to stick on? Or nothing that can stick to or be stuck on? There's no stickiness anymore. So a lot of the practice is just like noticing those places where we get stuck. And then you kind of massage it and you breathe mindfully, let go, relax your body, and then it gets unstuck. And slowly over time, there's less tension, less worry, less anxiety. You don't feel like you have to fight to defend your life all the time. That's why we have all this fear and anxiety. We always feel like we're backed into a corner, fighting for our life. And yet, we're still going to die. This body is still impermanent. It's still, no matter how much we fight, it's still being born, being dying. That is the nature of this body. So better just to realize that every day. And so with is your brother, right? Or was it her brother? Yeah. Then Thay invites us to look and see them as in 100 years. What will they be? Just some ashes, right? So when you're angry at your loved one, that's our practice, is to visualize them as they will be in 100 years. And how can you get angry at a pile of ashes? But that's all that will be, except our words, our thinking, our actions, they continue on past the lifetime of this body. But when we see our loved one as a pile of ashes on the ground, then our anger can be massaged away very easily. So these are a few things that I use to practice to deal with anger. And it's not easy. I'm not saying that it's all, a lot of what we're doing is first transforming ourselves, right? You don't expect the other person to change. And so there probably will be other emails which are full of hateful language, hurt language. So how can you be free and still receiving those emails? That is a koan to ask yourself. How can I be free and still receive these emails? And sometimes it means I'm not going to read that email. And I've done that too, even with loved ones. When I know, when I suspect already the content of that email, sometimes I just say, no, I need to protect my senses. And I choose, that's my right. I don't have to read that email. Just because you have my email address doesn't mean I have to read your email. Sorry. I didn't give away that. I didn't give away that right. When I never remember signing a contract like that. So sometimes that is, we have to practice that. We have to guard our senses if we feel overwhelmed. But then later on, when we have more stability, more compassion in our heart, we might go back and then read that email. But keeping compassion in our heart, when we notice the hurt and the anger coming up, we stop. We say, I cannot read anymore. Right now, I cannot consume any more of that. And the same goes for the newspaper, the television, the internet, and so forth. We need to, if we want to really have sovereignty, freedom, true freedom, we need to learn to limit our consumption. And so the Buddha invited monks to live in the forest and beg for their food. It seemed like a very precarious existence, but actually it's a wondrous existence. Because a lot of the things that we do in our life that expose us to toxic items of consumption come about because of our livelihood, of our need to pay our mortgage, pay for our car payment, keep our boss happy so we don't lose our job, so we keep our health insurance and so forth. And so there are some, I can say there are some reasons why we become a monk or a nun, because we want to let go of those things. And so it's more difficult when we are bound together by all these obligations and responsibilities. But even within those, we can find our freedom. So I wish you a lot of success, and please let me know how it goes. I'm happy to, Sangha, we're all happy to support you in your relationship with your brother. So it's, I think we said 90 minutes for this gathering, and so we're just hitting the mark, I think. So maybe we can finish with 3 sounds of the bell. Just come back to our breathing, reestablish ourselves in the present moment, letting go of all our worries, our anxiety, our fear. Allowing our ancestors, this moment, to fully listen to the sound of the bell, to stop their running. You practice for your ancestors.